So a couple of weeks ago, I got myself my first 3D printer. And it's been good. I've been having a lot of fun designing and making things. It's a great addition to my office. Now the only problem is that it's on the floor. It works fine. It's just that it gets a little dirty because it's in a corner. My cats don't like it. And I don't want to risk pulling my back every time I want to bend down and pick up a print. So I'm going to get some furniture. I could go to IKEA and buy something, or I could build my own. Hey, I'm John, and this is my first ever YouTube video. I'm a hobbyist woodworker. I love designing and making things, everything from everyday objects to furniture, with a keen interest for interior design. This channel is about sharing my journey of essentially learning by doing. Now on to my build. So there's a couple of things this piece needs to achieve. One, it needs to be big enough to place my 3D printer and its accessories on it. Two, I want to have storage for all my tools and stuff. Three, I want it to be mobile and modular since it's going to be in my home office, which is a little small. 4, the build needs to cost lower than 500 ringgit because at this price point, I can find pretty good alternatives in IKEA. 5, it has to look nice. And design-wise, I've got a couple of ideas. I'm working with pre-cut plywood, which is an added convenience, and I'm putting it all together with just wood glue and nails. I've decided to build 2 cabinets of drawers. They're similar to the tool cabinets that you find in workshops or even offices. Now if you place them side by side, they'll have enough space on top for my 3D printer. Here I'm putting together plywood to essentially make 2 cabinet boxes which will house all the drawers. I'll also make a simple mechanism to lock them in place together or separate them whenever I need to. I'm also taking inspiration from furniture designers in the 50s like Charlotte Perriand and Charles and Ray Eames. I like the use of colors as accents to organic material like wood. This was a key change in furniture designs in the 50s, where bright color was used more as an expression without overpowering the rest of the other elements like wood grain and texture. Especially for hard structured furniture like cabinets and bookcases, the colors add a lot of visual interest to an otherwise just boxy and flat design, which I hope will be the case with my build. Now here I'm marking out notches on the side of the cabinets. This will be where I'll insert clips that will hold the cabinets together. They'll go both on the front and the rear parts of the cabinet. And after this, I'll be routing these sections so that when the clips are installed, they'll be flush with the walls of the cabinet. Now instead of spending money for drawer rails and brackets, I'm going to be using a method that I got from Proper DIY, a channel here on YouTube, where he uses plywood strips as fixed rails. So this is how it works. I first cut up strips of plywood, which will then go along the insides of the cabinet. They'll act like rails for your drawers, both on the left and right side of the cabinets. To speed up this process, I tape 2 planks of plywood together and then cutting them at the same time. This way, I can get consistent and identical lengths while halving the amount of cuts needed. I'll also make a thinner strip as the rail at the base so that the bottommost drawer doesn't drag on the bottom of the cabinet. By using a makeshift spacer like this, I can then align all the rails at an even and straight line along the sides of the cabinet. Now I just have to make sure that the width of this spacer is wider than the thickness of the drawer base. That sounds a little confusing, but I promise it'll make sense in a little bit. So the drawer bases will then ride along the rails at the edges just like this. Once I've cut all the pieces to form the drawers, then it's just a matter of squaring them up like so, and then gluing and nailing them together. Now since I have 8 drawers to do, there's a lot of repetition in the process, which becomes quite time consuming. But we get there in the end. So after a quick dry fit and making sure everything fits nicely together, I can then align the drawers to the drawer bases and then glue up and nail them together. Moving on to the drawer fronts, I've decided to go with MDF for the top 3 because those will be painted. Here I'm cutting out the handholds on the bandsaw. I'm making these small cuts along the section which will help clear out material when I cut the curves. Now I decided on MDF because based on my research, apparently it's easier to get a smoother painting finish and it won't show the veneers on the side like plywood. Soon enough I've got all 8 drawer fronts ready, and after a quick sand, I then move on to painting them. For painting, I first start off with 2 coats of primer before moving on to the colors. The painting was the hardest part of the build. It was so messy that I barely recorded, besides painting the primer. Now once the paint has dried, it's then time to attach the drawer fronts to the drawers. I'm using playing cards here to get the drawer fronts evenly spaced and centered so that they won't catch on each other or the walls of the cabinet. Once I'm happy with the alignment, I then carefully lift the fronts together with the drawers. I drill pilot holes and then screw them together. I'm opting for screws on this part instead of nails so that I can fix mistakes if they don't line up by just unscrewing, making small adjustments and then screwing them back together. I repeat this 8 more times and now you'll get to see it near completion with the bright colored drawer fronts. Installing the wheels is pretty straightforward. You can also see where I chamfered the sharp edges of the cabinet, and I did this off camera. Now I'm pretty much at the home stretch at this point. After a quick sanding and cleaning, I then start applying stain. I'm using mahogany stain by Minwax, and it's my first time using this stain. To be honest, I really should have started at the bottom instead of the top where it's not too obvious. But in the end, it all turned out alright. So that's the finished build. And to be honest, it's actually been a couple of weeks since I finished this project. I just wanted to live with the drawers and use them so that I'd have actual user experience before I talk about it. My likes, my dislikes, and whatever part I can improve next time. So first, let's start with my likes. I really like how these drawers look. I think from an aesthetic point of view, I stayed really close to the inspiration that I had. The colors work really well with the dark stain. It becomes sort of like a small nod to the vintage designs that I was going for, while still being fairly contemporary. I'm really happy about the design decisions that I made for the functionality part of the build. For example, the size. I thought it was going to be too big, but it works perfectly. I can fit my printer, its accessories, and even a filament dryer on top, and there's more than enough space. That also means I've got larger drawers, and as you can see, I can fit 3 to 4 filament rolls per drawer. Having such large drawers also gave me the opportunity to print Gridfinity pins and organize my top 2 drawers. The wheels and the clips work really well. When they clip together and locked in, it's really stable, and whenever I need to clean the room, I'll just unlock it, unclip them, and move them aside. The last bit is really minor, but I'm really happy with the decision I made to make the drawer handles in the center of the drawers. This has made it really easy for me to reach out and to pull either side of the drawers without having to stretch out too far, especially in the configuration that I have it in with my table. Let's talk about the part that I call the neutral or middle ground. Let's talk about the cost. At the beginning of the build, I set out with the goal to keep the cost of the build less than 500 ringgit, which is about $125. Now at the end, this build cost me 550 ringgit. That's $135. So $10 more than my objective. So to be fair, I didn't meet that goal. The bulk of the cost came from buying pre-cut plywood. It would have been much cheaper for me to buy large sheets of plywood and cut them down myself. But to me, that's a worthwhile cost because I'd rather avoid a lot of mistakes I could have made, and most importantly, I was saving my own time. Now coming on to the dislikes, there are only 2 parts. I wish I would have used thinner plywoods for the drawers. That would have made them much lighter. The weight of the drawers, plus its contents, and then the friction because of the drawer rails, sometimes makes it a bit difficult to push the drawers back in. Lastly, I should have finished the drawers with oil on top of the stain because that would have left a much nicer finish than just the stain. But thankfully, that's something I can still fix. I just need to find the time to do it. Yeah, and that's it. If you've watched this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Moving forward, YouTube will be my space to document my journey in making things. While I started out with woodworking, I do plan to get into other different mediums, and you're very much welcome along on my journey as I make my way learning by doing. Thanks, and see you in the next one.